So Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to Teacher Haliza and my fellow friends. So today I'm joined with Zaim, Is and Amirul. They are going to do a debate about the status of a virus as a non-living thing. The aim of this debate is to determine whether a virus is a living organism or non-living organism. Moreover, I will be the judge for this friendly debate. We will start off with Is, which she will be presenting the status of a virus as a living organism.
Okay, so my first point for the day is that viruses, just like organisms, they have genetic information inside their nucleotides. What this is DNA or RNA. Now you must be wondering how, with this factor alone, they can be classified as living organisms. Let me simplify this for you. We're able to make a simple comparison between common living organisms and non-living. Let's say, for example, we compare a giraffe, which we all know is an organism. Giraffes have DNA and RNA inside their nucleus, and we compare them to, let's say, a bottle of water. A water bottle doesn't have genetic information in the form of DNA or RNA. And viruses, just like giraffes, they definitely have DNA and RNA. So I think with this factor alone, with this similarity alone, they can be also classified as living organism.
Alright, so moving on to Amirul and Zaim.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I will now present my argument. As we know, every beings have metabolic process, like plants, humans, even microorganisms. Metabolic process is a chemical reaction that occurs in a cell of a living organism. But unlike virus, they do not have any cell to carry out any process. So basically, they do not have a metabolic process, meaning that they are not alive. My second point is that most of living organisms generate energy to carry out process in their daily life. But virus does not generate energy because they do not contain mitochondria to produce ATP. Virus also could not move. Many living organisms must be able to move to gain food, except plants because they can make their own food through photosynthesis. But virus must rely on wind or water or vector to reach to their host cell. Once it is inside their host cell, the virus will just float around in the body, waiting for a cell to pick it up. So that defines virus as a non-living thing. Alright, now I'm gonna hand it over to Zaim.
Okay, why I feel viruses are not living organisms is that most of living organisms are made up of cells. But if we take a look at viruses, they do not consist of cells, but instead they are made up of protein, and we know that proteins are not, it's not a cell, but it's actually a molecule that's comprised of one or more long chain of amino acid. Therefore, viruses are not living organisms. Secondly, to back up my point is that viruses does not grow, produces no waste, and is unable to carry out respiration process. Essentially, all the organisms that are alive could grow and carry out respiration process. They also expel out toxic waste, whereas viruses does not grow or do any of that. Ultimately, classifying viruses as non-living creature. That's all from me.
I think I'm going to have to disagree with your points, such as the first point. They do not undergo cellular respiration. They do not grow. They do not get rid of their waste. I think because this is not necessary for them to thrive. As proof, even without conducting these processes, they're able to infect and continue to replicate. And the second point, also, I'm going to have to disagree with that. The part where you said that they do not use or produce energy. I think this is because they do not need energy for other processes other than replicating, which they do use up energy to replicate, but no extra energy is used for other processes. And continuing with this, as I said, they do replicate, given that they're able to infect hosts. And they do this by injecting their genetic information inside the host body cells to use the energy from the body cells to replicate and reproduce and make the copies of themselves. And besides that, they, like organisms, they also go through mutation and natural selection. And how this works is that when the viruses infect a body cells and they recommend the body cells to make copies of themselves, the genes undergo random copying errors sometimes. What this means is that it could make alterations and variants of the viruses. And for instance, we could see the Delta variants of the COVID-19 virus. And these variants, it could be stronger or more resistant, or they could be weaker. And these viruses, they undergo natural selection, and the stronger viruses will continue to survive and replicate and continue to make copies of themselves, whereas the weaker ones will just die out. And so I think we can come to a conclusion that viruses do go through similar processes, such as living organisms, such as they make replicates of themselves, they reproduce, they have genetic informations, they undergo mutation and natural selection. So I think with these factors, they can also be classified as living beings.
I think I'm gonna have to disagree with is you said like they needed energy to replicate, but actually they use their host energy to replicate. I think like when they entered the cell of a host cell, and then the DNA will hijack the machinery protein, which is the ribosome. So basically, they do not have the energy, but they stole it from the host cell.
Yeah, I think that's correct. So I think we can come to a conclusion already if there are no points. Or do you still have any points?
Your Honor, Your Honor can.
Alright, thank you, Zaim, Is, and Amirul. Um, after putting much consideration, we could conclude that most of the scientists worldwide acknowledge virus as a non-living thing, and some are still conducting to prove this otherwise. So I think that is all from us. Thank you.
Wait. I think I'm going
Oh,
to
ada
have to
lagi?
disagree with Omeir. I think what defines life is too subjective. It lies within the beholder, you know? Different perspectives see it from different ways. I think it's just too wide and too subjective for us to classify as one or the other. I think it really ikut orang lain pendapat about it, you know, and scientists are
Betul,
trying to
betul.
prove. Yeah.
Sorry, Is, I'm just following the script. Okay, so I think that's all from us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's it. Thank you. Everyone.
So, siapa yang nak bagi pendapat, boleh bagi pendapat sekarang tentang virus. Ada ke?
Boleh lah kot. I mean like apa yang from the debate tadi tu, I agree jugalah dengan point is tu yang and also apa yang diceritakan oleh Amirul tu. But virus ni dia mostly kan dia replicate dekat dalam if I'm not mistaken, the T cell, dia get into the blood vessels since it is macam permeable dekat dalam ni, macam COVID-19 lah. They destroy the T cell and they replicate. Bila diorang replicate dekat dalam the T cell tu, diorang akan probably macam mana dia disperse out of the T cell sebab diorang tak ada like the optimum metabolic like the optimum source untuk replicate tu. So that probably define why virus is not alive for most scientists lah, tapi everyone has their own opinion lah, macam Is cakap tadi, itu je lah.
Could argue that they could be they could be defined as something that remains abundant when they don't infect the body cells, yet they become active when they do infect a body cell. This is because they start to replicate and make other copies of themselves only when they start to infect. So without body cells, they remain abundant. Or I mean dormant, not abundant.
Side mana cikgu?
Mm-mm.
Saya tak boleh nak pilih lah cikgu sebab dua-dua kawan saya kan cikgu. Saya macam takut nak pilih seorang nanti musuh pula. Jadi saya rela jadi tuan speaker lah cikgu. Saya berpihak kepada tuan speaker.
Kita faham, cuma kita macam kita sendiri confused tau, sebab saintis dia classify sebagai non-living, tapi kita faham bila benda tu dia boleh reproduce, benda tu hidup lah kan, kita anggap macam tu kan. Tapi scientific dah classify dia sebagai non-living sebabkan dia hanya ada protein sahaja. Tapi sebenarnya ciri-ciri dia tu ciri-ciri seperti benda hidup. Tapi sebabkan fizikal dia tu. Tapi kalau cikgu sendirilah, kalau tanya cikgu kan, cikgu lebih suka classify dia sebagai semi-living thing tau, semi. But dia not truly the non-living thing dan dia not truly the living thing. Dia boleh jadi sebahagian. Boleh ke kita buat macam tu?
Saya agree cikgu, macam tu.
Kan? Dia tak ada, sebab bila non-living thing ni macam kayu lah, kayu ke batu ke, macam benda yang tak ada langsung proses-proses dia kan. Tak ada proses hidup dia. Tapi virus ni kebanyakan proses yang dia jalankan tu hampir menyamai proses yang dijalankan oleh living things. Tapi kita kena agree lah dengan, kita kena patuhlah dengan daripada saintis ni, dia dah bersetuju dia classify as non-living thing sebabkan dia orang dah classifykan living thing tu apa karakteristik yang perlu ada. Jadi the virus ni dia not tick the box. Banyak dia tak tick the box, so dia classify as non-living thing. Yes.
Okay. I think dia tak hidup kot sebab it's something that depends on another life form in order to live. It cannot live on its own. Because let's say if it tried to live on its own somewhere else, it wouldn't be able to not live, macam exist pun kan, because it needs to exist in something baru dia hidup. That's why you don't see viruses. You mostly see viruses inside other organisms. Parasites can live. Parasites can live outside of the host, but they still need a host for nutrients. It's not like they need a host to even exist. Macam tu. If that makes sense.
It makes sense.
The difference without parasite and virus is a virus cannot exist without a host, but a parasite only needs the host for nutrients, not for existence.
Okay. Menarik juga tu pandangan Syazril tu. Okay, bagus. So kita dengar banyak pendapat. So maksudnya kenapa dia masukkan topik ni dalam kamu punya textbook? Maksudnya benda ni pun menjadi debate di antara saintis. Mungkin kalau kita bincang pun dia takkan habis. Akhirnya kita bersetuju kepada pendapat yang ramai lah tentang dia sebagai non-living thing. Okay, menarik juga tu.
Cikgu?
Ya?
Virus ni sebenarnya dia originate dari mana?
Masa cikgu zaman sekolah, masa tu virus yang ditakuti adalah HIV. Kalau kamu dengar sekarang HIV tu dah very common, tapi masa zaman cikgu sekolah HIV ni baru saja macam orang perbincangkan dan dia baru banyak menjangkiti orang. Masa tu banyaklah teori yang katakan HIV ni datang daripada monkey. Kenapa dulu tak ada? Tiba-tiba HIV ni ada pada waktu dah zaman milenium kan. Kemudian baru ada daripada monkey. Dan juga ada yang kata kan sebab HIV orang relatekan dengan LGBT kan. Dulu pun kita pun tahu jugalah bila hubungan sesama jenis kan dia lebih kerap akan kena HIV. So kata dia yang macam benda-benda yang menyalahi hukum alam ni, dia akan create satu benda yang tidak dijangkakan. Macam tu lah. Tapi semua masih lagi teori. Tidak tahu. Okay. Kalau nak kata originate tu daripada ciptaan Allah lah. Tu je yang paling senang.